What's going on, Turf Show Times? This is Kenneth Arthur, managing editor at Turf Show Times, the website, the YouTube channel, the podcast. If you're watching the YouTube, you could listen to the podcast. If you're listening to the podcast, you could watch the YouTube. This is Turf Show Times, and I'm going to go over potential draft picks for the Rams in the third round of this year's draft, which is 104th overall, when LA will be on the clock for the first time, not on day one, not in round two, and not in the original round three, but not far after the Rams pick in round three. They will get their first actual pick, a compensatory selection that came after the Lions hired Brad Holmes to be their GM last year. The Rams got 2 third-round picks for that. And if it wasn't for that, the Rams may not be picking at all today, and maybe it was that extra comp pick that allowed, a less need to feel confident in trading 2 picks for Von Miller from the Denver Broncos. And then Miller signs with the Bills this offseason. The Rams will get back a 5th-round pick as a comp for that, and that's something. And so I want to go over, though, what the Rams could do with the help of our own writer here, Randy Soares, Randy Soares. He wrote an article at Turf Show Times. I'm going to go over some of the prospects with you. You can also check out that article at turfshowtimes.com. By the way, not for nothing, anybody notice that Sebastian Joseph Day is now a co-host of a podcast with Mike Tyson? How long has this been going on? I just found out. How long has this been going on? And just randomly, Mike Tyson, I was looking at this just hours ago, Mike Tyson punching a guy on a plane, a fan. Maybe an annoying fan. I don't know. That's not what we're here to do, but I thought that was strange about Sebastian Joseph Day, and I wanted to share it with Rams fans, even though he's now with the Chargers, and the Chargers will be selecting earlier than the Rams, but they also didn't win the Super Bowl. Didn't even make the playoffs. So there you go. Let's talk about how the Rams can get back there. Thanks to some options here. We've got 38 options by Vini, and we're going to talk briefly about them all and think who would be the best fit here for the Rams if they're still on the board when the Rams select. And, that's part of the difficulty of this guessing game, is that we don't really know who's going to be picked in the top 100. That's why we hold the draft. You could make a list of maybe 50 or 60 locks, I guess. And even that's kind of sketchy this year. Not a lot of consensus. Obviously, we know the guys that'll be in the first round, to some degree, they should all be in the top 100. And, most of the guys in the second round, should probably be in the top 100. It's this agreement that teams have that, leads to draft value, right? So we've got some idea, but it's not going to be perfect. So let's go over some of these names here. And we know that the Rams, their biggest need may be cornerback. I put the question to Rams fans at Turf Show Times in a survey this week, and the answer came back for what was the biggest Rams need. You answered cornerback. Darius Williams has been signed by the Jaguars. He is gone, and the Rams already probably had a need with or without Darius Williams, because Williams wasn't fantastic last season. Jalen Ramsey is still fantastic. And then you've got David Long and Robert Rochelle, who was just a rookie last year, has some injuries, and we'll see just sort of how that comes together. But in any case, it's like, well, what kind of cornerback are you hoping for the Rams to draft? If the Rams do draft a cornerback, you have to ask yourself, what kind of cornerback do you really expect them to draft? Number one, you can't really expect the Rams to draft a cornerback who will be starting this season. But you could say, well, maybe you want a more pro-ready cornerback. He doesn't have a very high ceiling. Maybe he is just a nickel, which is still pretty valuable, more and more valuable these days. Do you want a guy who's like, oh, wow, this guy's got a high ceiling. He's a great athlete. He's going to be a great project. Well, if you want that guy, like a Robert Rochelle, you might have to wait. So then why are you even really drafting for need in that case? The Rams don't have any high draft picks, and we know they're probably not going to be able to start draft any starters, not that they normally do. A lot of the Rams' second and third round picks under Les Snead didn't start in their first seasons. And sometimes it's the sixth round picks like Jordan Fuller who come in and immediately help. So you just never really know. And there is that case again, like what kind of cornerback do you want? One that has a really nice upside but won't be helping out this year, even though you're saying you want to help this year, or a guy who can maybe help this year, but may not be the type that's going to get a second contract, So let's see some of the options here that Vini has laid out at cornerback, and his rankings for them. Alontae Taylor out of Tennessee, 6 foot, 199 pounds. As Vini writes, experience and success in zone schemes as well as man coverage against top-notch college talent. Natural fit into the Rams' zone coverages. So maybe there you go. Maybe that's an option for a person who could play earlier in his career than some of the others, such as maybe Zion McCollum out of Sam Houston State, 6'2", 199 pounds. McCollum, one of the greatest testers at the Combine this year. I've seen from Texans writers, just how much they think like this is a natural fit for the Texans. Texans are looking for players who just like Houston is a nice connection. Like, honestly, just the Texans have to get people who are buying into the being with the Texans, and that's not a very easy thing to sell right now. And it does require players who want to be there, will buy into the culture, who will give themselves over to just a terrible team like the Houston Texans. And Zion McCollum, he's an incredible athlete, but he comes from Sam Houston State. He didn't play against the greatest competition. He may need a few years to pan out. If the Rams take a guy like Zion McCollum, I think the idea there is maybe in 3 years he's starting, which has been Les Snead's curve for a lot of guys. Some of the best picks that he's made has been on that path, including Sebastian Joseph Day, who we saw earlier. So, that's kind of the question, as you can see from Kent Lee Platt, who does the relative athletic score, which has its upsides and has its negatives. You don't use it as something. It's just a frame of reference. But Zion McCollum was the best RAS score in the history of RAS scores, for cornerbacks, 1987 to 2022, a perfect 10 on his RAS because he's got the size, 6'2", 199 pounds. He's got an insane vertical, an insane broad jump. He's got such unbelievable measurements there that you just have to talk about it, a 988, a 975, 992, all here. His relative athletic score, this puts him in the 99th percentile or the 99th percentile for 40-yard dash, and the 10-yard split. 146 is crazy. So to see him in the fourth round or the third round, it's a very raw player. Maybe he never comes out and becomes an NFL player at all. Maybe he does, and he's just fine. That's possible too. So you've got that situation here with like very stark contrast and differences here between Alontae Taylor and Zion McCollum. He had a perfect 10 out of 10 in relative athletic score for cornerbacks, 99th percentile for his 10-yard split, which is just insane at 146, 433 40-yard dash. Again, pretty much 99th percentile, 6'2", 199, incredible vertical, broad jump. Just a lot of things that you don't see out of most human beings, and that's why he'll be in the NFL. But for how long and how much is he actually playing? It's the wild card situation there. Josh Jobe out of Alabama, obviously there you're coming from a program like Alabama. According to Randy, played hurt a lot in 2021, physical style of play. Think he could fit into LA's zone schemed. special teams, which is, again, that's a great point by Randy here, is that you want to look for guys who are ready to play some special teams right away, year one. And that is a skill, and that is a quality that not everybody here has. And there's also other aspects to special teams, whether that's return value or something else to that effect. And so if that's something that you're getting marks at in your draft reports, good opportunity to get drafted earlier, because teams are not really expecting a lot from most of their day 3 picks as far as becoming some sort of offensive or defensive star. You're not always going for guys who you think are going to blossom into being the next Stephon Diggs or Tom Brady. That's not how every pick works. And on day 3, a lot of those picks are, situational needs, special teams needs, filling out an entire roster or practice squad, getting guys in the building that you like for this reason or another. And so, good point there. And we've got Josh Jobe and Marcus Jones, guy to Houston, undersized at 5'8", 174. He would not be number one on the RAS, even though, he's a good athlete, of course, but the size is something that's going to hold him down. I'm not going to say hold him back, but it's certainly something that puts him in LA's range on day 3, and it's his playmaking ability that Randy likes so much here, as well as, again, talking about special teams, and he could return kicks. I like this website, NFLmockdraftdatabase.com. It's not a hard and fast rule for where these guys are ranked, but I like their consensus big boards, because it does exactly what it says. It takes all the big boards and the mock drafts, and it just sort of piles them all together, and this gives us a read potentially on what the feelings are right now, and general average, feelings should be treated as that, general and average. But it is something that gets us started maybe on where these guys could be perceived to be drafted. And you've got Marcus Jones here, 87th overall. Looks like he's about 12th or 13th, I would say, among the cornerbacks. You've got Zion McCollum here at 107th overall, a few spots behind him. Josh Jobe at 128th overall. So those guys would be considered to be right there in that range, perhaps, and all in about roughly the same range here. Alontae Taylor being the other option in that year, right there at 115. So we can see these guys are right there in line with how Randy viewed them for potentially being open to that spot. Obviously, we've got the rankings here. Well, how about interior offensive line? To me, this is not a huge need, and it doesn't really go with what Les Snead tends to do, which might be why it is what Les Snead does in this draft. He did take guys like Brian Allen and Joseph Noteboom in the middle of the draft, and many others. So there is value there that he sees in the types of guys that you get there. Austin Corbett was a high second-round pick for the Browns, and for a reason, right? So Dylan Parham out of Memphis is a guy I think is rising up boards, getting a lot more attention as the draft draws near. Stood out at the Senior Bowl. He's a center, but he also has versatility to play the other positions, especially interior. Randy is not sure if he has the lateral agility, though, to fit with LA's need, and that's important to keep into mind. Another center here, Luke Fortner out of Kentucky, 6'4", 370 pounds. Is experienced in both the outside zone and the screen game. Not a great athlete, makes up for it in football IQ and effort, and he's got versatility with playing guard in the past. Another very versatile guy is Zach Tom. Believe he played left tackle. Yep. And he did that at Wake Forest. But at 6'4", 304 pounds, he's not going to play left tackle in the NFL. And at 6'4", 304 pounds, maybe he could be a center in the NFL and would be sitting there in LA behind, Brian Allen and David Edwards, who will be a free agent next year. Brian Allen re-signed, but David Edwards will be a free agent next year. And then you've got a competition really at right guard, right? So I guess I wasn't really selling that enough that maybe it is a need. Thayer Munford out of Ohio State. Obviously, come with the pedigree of Ohio State. Ohio State has a few guys looking at this draft. Nicholas Petit-Frere, it's hard to say exactly where he will go. He is a tackle right now, but will potentially be a guard at the next level. Munford brings guard and tackle ability, and Randy feels the lack of agility and the heavy feet make him a bad combo in an outside zone run game. You've got Marquise Hayes out of Oklahoma, Chris Paul out of Tulsa, And he's got one of those names that when you see it, you kind of remember, oh, there's a guy named Chris Paul in this draft. 4-year starter with versatility. Donovan West out of Arizona State. It's actually an H in here. That's on me. That's my bad. There's an H in there, and I think that's interesting. But Arizona State, he's a center, 6'3", a little undersized there at 296 pounds. Maybe a reach at the pick for the Rams at 104. I'm not sure Cam Jurgens would really be a reach, though. You know, he's got a really nice athleticism coming out of Nebraska, really unique in that regard, and he may go higher than pick 100. So that's that could potentially be called a steal if the Rams were to pick a Cam Jurgens. But is that a smart pick when you've got Brian Allen? Sometimes with, you know, less need, he is thinking, I'm going to draft this guy for 2025. You know, he's thinking that far down the line. But there are quite a few options here laid out by Randy. If we go to our big board and see where there's sort of other players in that same range, where we got Dylan Parham at 77, we got Cam Jurgens like at 102, which again, like, yeah, he might go above where the Rams are selecting. You've got Luke Fortner at 119, Marquise Hayes at 121, Zach Tom at 144, and I feel like, yeah, he's going up. He's moving up. Leslie Smith is moving up out of Virginia Tech. Chris Paul's moving up, like I said, out of Tulsa, 180th overall. You've got Thayer Munford, Donovan West. So all of the usual suspects here. You might look at Alec Lindstrom, very successful college player. Alec Lindstrom with that Boston College offensive line is very successful, the best offensive line in football last year. Cade Mays out of Tennessee. But yeah, this would be more in the reach, which Randy continues his series here this week, and you'll see more of the guys that he's got for the fourth round. At tackle, you've got Matt Waletzko out of North Dakota, massive, 6'8", 312 pounds, which is a little light for 6'8". Honestly, I'm sure he looks very svelte and fit, and you know, that's probably good for him. But at 6'8", 312, are you going to be able to handle a pass rush? Rasheed Walker out of Penn State, another guy I think is moving up the board, 6'6", 313 pounds. Luke Gadecki out of Central Michigan. His teammate Bernard Raymond will probably get drafted in the top 50 or so, maybe first round. But Gadecki is not a slouch, 6'5", 312 pounds. Athletic, just like Raymond, used to be a tight end, and he's got versatility. Maybe Raymond doesn't, but Gadecki does. Center, guard, tackle, did it all at the Senior Bowl. Kellen Diesch out of Arizona State, I think he could go top 100 as well. 6'7", 301 pounds. Sean Ryan, another guy. You know, there's a lot, not a really great consensus, you know, and I think these guys, Kellen Diesch, Sean Ryan, regularly I saw them at the Pac-12 leaderboards for, you know, week of the player of the week and stuff like that for the Pac-12. And they've got their upsides, but do they really have, where will they, you know, fit at the next level? Or how many steals are here in the offensive line on day 2, day 3? That'll be the question. A lot of really interesting names earlier out of the Rams range, and you voted at Turf Show Times that tackle was perhaps the biggest need. That's not a need. The Rams do have Joseph Noteboom and Rod Havenstein right now, but yeah, it's something that you always want to be prepared. We don't know exactly how Noteboom is going to hold up as a full season left tackle, and Rob Havenstein is his contract. You know, I think it's up in a couple years, but you never know what's going to happen. You got Rasheed Walker at 101, Kellen Diesch at 133. It looks like he's actually falling down the boards. Matt Waletzko moving up here, so that's a good one to keep in mind. I think Andrew Stuber might be an earlier pick than this out of Michigan. He's got some pretty good athleticism. Maybe will take a bit of a while to get up to NFL speed, which is again maybe a reason he is more of a target for less need. But yeah, it could be interesting. There seems to be a pretty big gap between the Abe Lucas level and the Rasheed Walker level, and you know, if one of these guys falls to the Rams, certainly that is going to be taken into consideration. On the edge, you've got Josh Paschal out of Kentucky, another guy I think he is moving up the boards. Dominique Robinson out of the Miami of Ohio. Isaiah Thomas out of Oklahoma. D'Angelo Malone out of Western Kentucky. And Amare Barno out of Virginia Tech. Certainly, I think that these are all players that are interesting, and again, they might be gone by the time the Rams are on the board. That'll be interesting to see what happens in the first round and then in the first 2 rounds, and then start to get a sense maybe of who could be on the board. And edge is always a thing where you never know how soon guys are going to go, just because teams are like, oh, why did you draft today? You have 3 edges. Well, I needed 5. That's going to happen. So it'll be interesting to see where those guys go. You've got Paschal at 84. D'Angelo Malone at 112, Dominique Robinson at 136, Amare Barno at 151. And yeah, again, it's going to be a pretty big drop off there at a certain point. So the Rams don't want to get the best one that they can get. At running back, Rachaad White out of Arizona State could be a very good dual threat player at the next level. Maybe one of the only potential 3 down backs that could fall to, day 3. Zamir White out of Georgia. Randy's not 100% sure that he's going to fit into the Rams scheme. Maybe he's a bit of a Sony Michel, and he's also had 2 ACL surgeries. Pierre Strong, considered one of the better running backs in this draft class. And again, maybe he's not even one of the top 100 prospects overall because he's a running back. Could be a steal in that regard. Coming out of South Dakota State, 5'11", 207 pounds. Wouldn't have faced the best competition there at South Dakota State, but he's got athleticism. He's got a lot of what teams would look for. He just didn't play at North Dakota State, which was a powerhouse college. Off ball, these guys, again, running back, these guys could all be available on day 3. And certainly when the Rams are on the board at 104, they're not going to get Breece Hall or Kenneth Walker. But, even James Cook, might be available. And here, obviously, he's at 90. But even James Cook, who's just really a receiving threat, could be available to the Rams. Isaiah Spiller. Maybe, because you don't know that Dameon Pierce isn't going to go in the second round. And, some of these guys go earlier than you think. Rachaad White, 109. You've got Zamir White, who's just behind Tyler Allgeier. Pierre Strong, as I said, moving up. Maybe a guy like Abram Smith or Hassan Haskins or Jerome Ford. All could be possibilities. Off-ball linebacker, Darian Beavers, Terrell Bernard, DeMarco Jackson. I would say I'm a fan of Beavers the most out of that group, but they all do little things differently. Tight end, Cade Otton out of Washington, Jake Ferguson out of Wisconsin, and Jeremy Ruckert out of Ohio State. I think this is a guy, another fast riser here. Cade Otton just always stuck around, and, there are things there that could make him a good sleeper pick in this draft. And really, maybe, one of the most overlooked players at tight end right now. Jake Ferguson, kind of like on the other spectrum. Maybe he's getting he gets a lot of love, and you wonder if that lines up there. You got Jeremy Ruckert, number 3 tight end overall. Not a super strong tight end class here, probably not in the first round. The Rams could have their pick of almost any of them, whether that's maybe an athletic freak like Jelani Woods. One of my personal favorites, Isaiah Likely out of Coastal Carolina, because I'm such a big fan of Grayson McCall. But you got Cade Otton there at 97, Jake Ferguson at 139. If you want to take a chance on Jalen Wiedemeyer, he'd be there too. Defensive line, Fedarian Mathis at 104. That could be the best player available, according to Randy. So something to take there, because, I think Fedarian Mathis could be a second-round pick. Haskell Garrett definitely had a lot of time. I think he was a really big recruit and it had his moments there at Ohio State, but never quite came and took that next level, that next step that people may have expected. But hey, he still could in the future. 6'2", 300 pounds. You got Michael Clemens out of Texas A&M, 6'5", 263. So let's see where these guys line up here at the defensive line. Fedarian Mathis, 68. Haskell Garrett 152. So yeah, those are reasonable. Makes sense here. Matt Henningsen might be moving up the boards, but he's all the way down at 307. So that could be a 7th round pick. So options there. And then wide receiver, you can't completely rule it out. They've signed Allen Robinson. They have Cooper Kupp. There's Tutu Atwell and Van Jefferson on the roster. There's Jacob Harris on the roster. But if you get a steal, you get a steal. Eric Ezukanma out of Texas Tech and Velus Jones, one of the fastest players in the draft out of Tennessee. He's been meeting with a lot of teams, it would seem. So those could be potentials, but you could probably wait until day 4 if you really, or not day 4. Don't wait till day 4. But maybe in round 4 you could get somebody there. Safety, Verone McKinley. There you go. And quarterback, maybe a Carson Strong. Hey, I like this one just in the sense that I think Carson Strong could be like a 4th round pick and could end up as the best quarterback in this draft class. Just when you look at the class as a whole, it's not that crazy. Randy goes with Luke Fortner, the center, and maybe guard this to start his career there, obviously, if he were to go to the Rams. So you'd have Fortner slotted in probably between Brian Allen and Rob Havenstein, and there you go. Maybe you're getting a starter this season with the draft pick potentially, so I totally get that. A guy that maybe can help closer to now, even though I think Bobby Evans probably, someone, if he doesn't win the job, I think somebody on the team already will win the job. So I think even if you draft a guard, you're probably, in my opinion, drafting a guard who doesn't play this year. And if you're going to do that, you could just develop a player at any position, So I think if you're going with best player available, maybe you would go then with the defensive lineman Fedarian Mathis. If Fedarian Mathis is there for you, maybe that is it, best player available, because I think anybody you draft on this team other than punter is going to be a backup this year. It's how Sean McVay is operated. It is how Les Snead is kind of operated. I think when you've got your first pick and it's your only pick on day 2, you want someone that you can go home with that day and tell the fans like, hey, we got this guy, so thanks for holding out for so freaking long, but we have this player now on the team, so I hope you enjoy it, and on to the next one, So that's, I think, that could be what you get with Luke Fortner. Maybe that is the guy that makes you go like, wow, on to the next one. Very excited about this, very happy about this. But maybe it is Zamir White or Pierre Strong, because then you're saying also, hey, look, we know that Cam Akers missed all of last season except for the playoffs. We know that Darrell Henderson will be a free agent next year, and really he's always had injury concerns. The Rams don't really have any other running backs to really make you think that they're going to put someone back there that could be like a very valuable, you don't want to bring up Todd Gurley's name, but a very good running back, that like a 3-down back could be Cam Akers, potentially could still be Darrell Henderson, but maybe running back is the way to go. And maybe edge, just maybe edge is the way to go, just because there's always value there. You get a guy like Josh Pascal, or D'Angelo Malone maybe, or Amari Barno. Doesn't feel so crazy. And if you're just going to develop a guy, maybe you get ready to part with Rob Havenstein and you do draft Kellen Diesch. It's like there are so many ways here for the Rams, I think, to go. If this is the board, I'm sure a lot of these players will be on the board when the Rams are picking. And then what do? I guess when you really see all the names, the job becomes a little bit harder, doesn't it, than what we judge them for. So check out turfshowtimes.com and subscribe to the YouTube channel for more. The draft is just 1 week away. And I'm Kenneth Arthur. Follow Turf Show Times on Twitter. Bye.